I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Charles Wallace, and welcome to the Bare Essentials podcast. As we continue on our journey to build a stronger community, I'm very excited to share with you all the Kindness Alliance, which is a unique free of charge advertising initiative looking to support businesses that share in our core values. Each episode will look to spotlight a different member, celebrating their contributions and dedication to kindness. Would you like to get involved? Just visit the Kindness Alliance section on our website, www.thebareessentialspodcast.com, or just send me a message. And now, a huge thank you to this week's Kindness Alliance member.
Welcome to Family Farms, where our culinary journey is woven with passion, dedication, and a commitment to crafting the finest bacon-wrapped chicken, a timeless delicacy that has tantalized the taste buds since 1974. At Family Farms, we're more than just a traditional name. We've evolved into purveyors of gourmet delights. Join us on this flavorful adventure, where every bite tells a story of tradition, quality, and the enduring spirit of Family Farms.
Hi, Josh. How you doing? Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So, Josh, like I said, we started a little bit before I hit record here, but really glad to have you join me today. Think it's going to be really good for the audience. With that being said, mind doing a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I always like to start with the personal. So I come from quite a large family. So my parents were often out working when I was younger. My older sibling, I'm the youngest of four, so my siblings were off doing older sibling things. And so I spent a lot of time on my own, which may be two things. Number one was very independent. Number two was very feral. And those are two kind of themes that I've kept throughout my life. And I suppose they're kind of my biggest strengths and my biggest weaknesses, really. And they've just been kind of pillars throughout. I live in France, over in Lyon, and I split my time between the UK and France. My partner lives over in UK, and I'm over in France. My boy is here, and that's the reason why I'm in France. I've been I've just exited sport, so sport or elite environments, should we say. I was a performance coach / manager for about 18 years, and I have worked across Olympic medal winning programs through to professional rugby, professional football, kabaddi, wrestling, boxing, military special forces, where I ran a human performance program over in the Balkans region. And I then moved over to work in Formula 2, Formula 3 racing as a performance coach for a racing car driver. Now my small company is called Wellness Blueprint, and essentially I support organizations and individuals to manage stress a little bit more effectively, to carve out a little bit more work-life harmony for themselves, to manage, avoid, overcome burnout, how to switch off more effectively, how to create boundaries for people in their life. And my kind of fascination with the well-being space and stress management, if you like, stems from two main areas, really. Like, the first one's very personal to me, and that's a deep part of my story. And the second is a fantastic course that I went on when I was working with the military guys. I was sent over to Belgium to do a course with NATO Special Forces headquarters, which was mental performance and resilience course. And I was fortunate that I think only about 6 civilians ever went through that course. I think it's been discontinued since, but it was a pretty amazing course, like a real deep dive and look under the bonnet as to what happens at real kind of tier 1 operator level and how they manage stress, inoculate it, train it so that people have the skills to be able to deal with the extreme pressure and the most austere environments you can imagine. The stories and scenarios that we went through were just as extreme, if not more, than half the films you'd see on TV. And what I was able to do off that course, or with that course, was join the dots between some things that I'd experienced earlier in my life. So in 2016, June the 16th, I fell asleep behind the wheel of my car on the motorway. If you're in the US or Canada, that'll be the freeway. And I woke up with my car against the barriers, my foot on the accelerator, and my foot on the other foot on the brake, which is actually really hard to do if you think about how you drive a manual. And I was woken up by cars going past and the horns blaring. Just that woke me up, and I came to. Of course, it scared the life out of myself, but I didn't really make any significant changes. A little while later, I had a bit of a meltdown on a beach in Thailand, a holiday I've been saving up for a couple of years, and I just was wailing like a little kid. And I don't want my life to be like this. It's not the plan I had for myself. We probably might get onto some of this, but I guess I'll finish the story now I've started. Within 3 weeks of being back from that trip, I had always wanted to work abroad. So I had 3 job interviews for jobs abroad. Within 4 weeks, I had 3 offers. And within 6 weeks, I was on a plane to India. I basically just dropped everything and just ran away. That gave me back my mojo for life in the industry. But I never really addressed any of the issues, the underlying issues relating to stress management and burnout. And it was only when I did that NATO course that I was like, okay, this is what's happened to me. And I understood it. And there was multiple other things that now what I've been able to do is connect everything, translate all the information I've got and received from my own personal journey and the education I've had, the environments I've worked in, translate that to everyday person's life. So we know that the battlefield is not the boardroom. We know that the field, the pitch, the court is not the same as what you might do on the shop floor or in the factory. So I position myself as a translator now. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, or a lot about me.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot there, and I have to be honest, I really like having people like yourself on, because I think for the most part, when it comes to our stress and just in general, I think we have a hard time sometimes facing up to some of those deeper seated fears, I'll call it, or what's really behind it. You absolutely come across as a very strong-minded individual. And I think if people at first glance would look at you, Josh, and say, well, that guy probably has never experienced what I have experienced, right? It's me, I'm alone in what I experience. What you mentioned about the beach in Thailand, falling asleep behind the wheel. Could you just maybe touch a little bit on that? I'd like the audience to get an idea of what were some of the things behind that, and what maybe you were like prior to what you present now.
Yeah, and what I want to caveat everything, and if there'll be a few key messages I'd love for people to take away. My goal is to help as many people as possible, and to use my knowledge, experiences, personal and professional, to support others to maybe not go through some things, or to reach out and just know that you don't have to go through these things alone. Know that every single person or every single thing with a heartbeat is just trying to figure this out. No single person has got everything figured out. So we're all on the same page. There's also a funny analogy that if we were to all get together, 50 of the people that throw all of our problems into the center of a room, there'd be a mad dash to go and get back your own problems. And because everybody has issues, every single human being has problems, struggles, challenges, and I'm no different. I think what I've managed to do is have a look at what they are and where they came from, where they stem from, my habits and behaviors, how I was contributing to the problem. So the guy back then, I mean, I'm a work in progress, the same as you are, and the same as everybody listening. So the guy back then I had a relentless pursuit for more and better. I used to call myself Mr. More and Better, and I had to kill him off because he was no good. He was no good for my life. Mr. More and Better was this dude that he was relentless pursuit of excellence in the workplace, and didn't really give two shits about the personal life, the well-being. Every single other person came before me, and I put the job first at all turns, to the extent that between the ages of 26 to 31, I can't remember a single positive thing that happened for me socially. And that's not because there weren't great things happening. It is because I wasn't allowing them in. I wasn't allowing myself to experience them. I wasn't allowing myself to enjoy them because I always had three-quarters of my vision on what I was going to be doing next with work. I was obsessed, but not that dumb phrase, obsession is a word used by the lazy to describe the dedicated. I was obsessed in an unhealthy way. So essentially, and I know a lot of people will resonate with these things, and I don't mean these in a judgmental way at all. It's more of this was my journey, and I know that some of these things will resonate. My identity was wrapped up in what I did for a living, and my job squashed my life as opposed to a job fitting into the life that I want to lead. I had zero work-life harmony. I was just work, 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 and eventually it catches up with you. And I think different things happen throughout our lives, and we realize that's not the life I want to lead. And I think there have been different time points when I've taken control of different elements of life, but it's a little bit like peeling back an onion. You kind of get right. I've got control. I've got vision. I know what my North Star is. And then this other layer kind of reveals itself. It's like, oh, what's this? I thought I completed it. It's like, but then there's another level. And I joke at the moment that my kid is like, I've got a fairly stable relationship with stress at the moment. We know each other pretty well. Got a lot of stress in my life. I'm a single dad. I live overseas, and I have a very limited support network. And he's like the final boss. So he's 4 years old, and he's like the final boss. And I try and I try and I try, but at certain times he just pokes, and it's like I can't. It's like you can't control it. And just he's the final boss, and he's the missing piece in the puzzle, I suppose, for my stress management.
Man, it's really timely for me. And I, a lot of the things you just said there hit me like a ton of bricks. Just, I kid you not, just over probably the last couple of days. And it's just amazing how I feel fortunate that sometimes I'll interview people, and I think that, we had to reschedule this, and it probably was appropriate because I honestly, what you just said made me feel a whole lot better about some of the situations I'm currently dealing with. So I want to thank you for that selfishly as we continue to talk here. It was definitely poignant and it hit home. So when it comes to stress, and I believe that for most of the people watching, we're probably all still, a lot of people still thinking, well, I'm still not that level. My problems are more. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned in your intro about you've really have had the experience of dealing with a lot of, I'll say, strong-minded, very high-level individuals, it sounds like. Josh, how does that translate what you see as far as the makeup of some of those individuals and how that compares to the makeup of, I'll just say, average, everyday kind of folks like myself and probably a lot of people listening?
There's a few different parts to this answer. Firstly, they are humans. We are all humans. We're flesh, blood, bones. We're all made up of exactly the same things. They have emotions the same way that we have emotions. The fundamental difference between these individuals in what some people call elite performance environments, so military, special forces, motorsport athletes that are doing things at a very, very fast rate and having to recover, not compound stresses, having to recover, reset, refocus, and go again very, very, very quickly. The common denominator is the way in which they handle emotion, and the fundamental fact of the matter is that they train that as a skill. They identify that emotional regulation is heavily linked to stress management because we know that there's a physiological response to stress, which is increased stimulation of our our sympathetic nervous system. There's a natural response: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, which now seems to be becoming a popular one. And they train it. So stress inoculation is them essentially putting just the right amount of strain on an individual with just the right amount of support to stretch them so that they adapt and evolve, and then giving them the skills to be able to do that in challenging environments. Then they increase the challenge. Now, we've all had these situations where, well, I can talk to you guys till the end of days about stress, and we'll probably go into a few tactics as well. But then you go and apply that in a high pressure situation, it is gone. It's absolutely gone, because you have so many external variables. The emotional brain chimp on your shoulder takes over. He's going absolutely wild. So all you can do is, all you know how to do is feed it, because you haven't challenged yourself and learned the skills to be able to do something else, which is stop, pause, respond, and not react. And that's the skills that they train, and they train day in, day out at all opportunities. But think about the elite environment. You don't just learn about stress management when you become a special forces operator. You are taught from the minute you walk, you put your feet in a pair of boots in the military. Like, you're taught about these skills. They're fundamentals, not just, but they just don't call it stress management. It's just knowing your job inside out, drilling your skills to the nth degree, doing the basics, brilliant basics over and over and over. And they shape their environment for the goal of the outcome goal, which is to go downrange and to protect and serve. And the requirements of that, the training matches that. And in life, the problem that we have is that we're never really taught how to manage stress effectively. It doesn't get taught in school, it doesn't get taught in college, it doesn't really. It's emotional management and regulation. Apparently now, it's now starting to become a normal part of education. But previously, like our generation, we weren't taught about this. It was just nothing. Emotion was just ignored. So why would we expect to know how to deal with an increasing workload, our kids playing up, relationship challenges, financial troubles? How would we ever know of these things if we don't put some time and energy into discovering it?
You mentioned about not being taught it, and it just brought this to mind. What do you say? I think it wasn't that we were taught it, but I remember, and I still sometimes hear this. What do you say to the folks when it comes to the stress and emotions, how you can't bottle it up, you just have to let it come out? Now, I think the ways that people let it come out most of the time is pretty unhealthy and not beneficial. But I think that's what, at least for me at my age now, I think that's what I remember most about, it was all about emotional release. Don't hold it in. And it didn't matter what you kind of tore down in the wake of that, as long as you let out your emotion. What do you kind of say to that, Josh? Because I think the whole thing you're talking about is really beneficial, but I think there's too many people that's just like react, release, I feel better, so that's what matters.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few different parts to that. Like, we're shaped by our environment and primarily how we're raised. If we're raised by our parents who are always shouting, always kicking off, always like emotionally charged, that's what we potentially will model. But there does come a point where it becomes a choice. Like, the only real thing that we can influence and have full control over in life is our responses to things. It's not life, death, anything. There's so many things we can't control. That's the one single thing that we can always control, regardless of the situation. We can always do that. It's simple, but it is really, really not easy at all. And when we strip it back, we get to choose how we respond to stress. Everybody experiences it in a different way. And a great example of that is public speaking. If I was to say to someone, get two people next to each other, right, we've got a presentation coming up in an hour with 500 people or 50 people, you would have one person like, okay, cool. What do you want me to talk about? The other person would be like, absolutely freak out. So one person's nervous system's gone absolutely haywire. The other person's just super chilled. There's no physiological changes. That stress hasn't shown up in the body for that individual, because that's just normal for them. But understanding stress and your relationship with stress is critical, and that is what will dictate your reactions. So my phrase that I would always use is respond and don't react. So reactions are often emotionally led. When something is emotionally led, think back to a time when you last responded to a stressful situation. Did you do yourself justice? Are you happy with the way in which you reacted? So 99.9% of the time when I respond emotionally to something, it's not served me well at all. So I'm pretty sure most people will be the same. But this is probably a good point to mention a couple of tactics that people can actually use. So respond and don't react. So understand that when something stressful takes place, there's a primal reaction that takes place. Primal reaction is upregulation of your nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system goes bonkers. It's that fight, flight, freeze. That's dumping a load of cortisol into your body, and you will stay ramped up until your body, your mind gets the signal that you're safe. And once that signal is sent to the body, 9 times out of 10, by doing something physical, you will start to calm down and regain control. And that can happen incredibly quick. So the military guys called this the 3 R's: recognize, reset, refocus. Recognize there's a stressful situation going on. And all of this is to appease that chimp, that monkey that's going bonkers. Emotional reactions like giving the monkey a banana. And a calmer and more logical response. A monkey doesn't like that. So you need to buy yourself a few seconds to be able to calm down that monkey. So recognize there's a stressful situation going on. The monkey doesn't like logic. The monkey doesn't like reason, and it stutters like, what? That's enough time for you to hijack that emotional response. So recognize and accept that there's a stressful situation, and do it out loud. Like, I wouldn't choose this. This is just where I am right now. This is a challenge. This is not ideal. This sucks. And that is literally enough time. That's all you need to do. Enough time for you to do something physical. So let's get into your body. So what my personal favorite is breath work, because it's always with us till the day we die. So it would be a breath in through the nose and a longer exhale through the mouth. So we want to avoid this, shoulders coming up, chest coming up. We want to try and keep that belly breathing. The nasal breathing is controlling the amount that we breathe in, and then longer exhale is that the inhale relates to a ramping up of our sympathetic response, and long exhalation relates to the calming down element. The other things that military guys use maybe like a snap band. So it might be like an elastic band that can like trigger you to get back into your body and reset your mind. So a lot of people hold their tension a different way. So it could be in the shoulders, could be around your jaw, could be in your fists. And a really great example of this is a study that they did in F1, where they put stress sensors, I think it was either in the gloves or on the wheel of the F1 car. And during qualifying, that's the most stressful part of the weekend for the drivers. They found that as the stress was increasing, the way in which the force that they applied to the grip was going through the roof. But of course, that translates up through the entire chain, and that was affecting their heart rate, their blood pressure, which was affecting their cognitive capacity and their ability to make fast and accurate decisions. So there's a huge connection between that. Now, the final piece would be so that's the physical element. And then the final piece would be the refocus. So what's the smallest kind of next best step you can take? So from a personal perspective, in your personal life, maybe someone's cut in front of you in traffic and you're just about to blow your top. So you go through, recognize, yeah, this is real stressful. Like, what? Can't believe someone's just done that. Yeah, it's not ideal. I'm going to do something physical. And then what's the smallest thing you could do to move your brain away from that incident? It might be a check on your mirrors. So you do you check your mirrors and you check your blind spots. It might be that you change a radio station and look for a song that you like. And that's a quick reset from your personal life. From professional, it might be as simple as you just come out of a difficult meeting. What's the smallest and the easiest thing you've got to do on your task list? And then just look at it. Doesn't matter what it is, look at it. It's short, it's sharp, it won't take long, and then just bang, jump on it and get it done. No thinking, no, just pure action straight away. So recognize, reset, refocus is that's a skill that the military guys got down to like split second. So you really, really, really can do it in a short space of time, but don't expect to nail it overnight. It's going to take time to get boxed off.
That's definitely really, really helpful. I just, again, personally, for, what I do for a living, I honestly know that can help myself and even people on my own team. So I appreciate that answer. Josh, when I was preparing to speak to you, I want to give you some kudos here. First off, I interview a lot of people, and your website is one of the best, most well put together, informative sites I've come across. So I just wanted to give you a compliment on that, and good as time as any now to jump into. So, what's the wellness blueprint? What inspired it?
Well, it's interesting, and thank you about the website. I always think it's rubbish, but there we go. It's just amazing perspective that people have, and two different lenses that people look at the world, I guess. Yeah, so wellness blueprint. I think we've gathered like throughout my career, I've experienced the highest highs and lowest lows that exist within the performance world, and I've won Olympic medals. I've been part of gold medal winning programs. I've been sacked, fired, like pushed away, strung along. I've won championships. I've been given, special forces, uh, received recommendation from, or yeah, recommendation from recognition, sorry, from special forces generals. And then I've been bullied, burnt out, hit the wall, dealt with narcissistic bosses. I've seen and felt it all. So what I wanted to do, and I had no guidance. I was a lone wolf, and I went through all of that, and I had no guidance at all. I never had a mentor until 3 years ago. And the problem with that is that it leaves scars, and they doesn't need to leave scars. Like, we should be able to enjoy our pathway and our life. So essentially, I wanted to support people. I always felt like in the performance space, I was only ever really good at two things. Number one was logistics. So the largest number that we had on at any point in my career was 189 people walk through the door, and in a really small space of about the size of three squash courts put together. And I had to manage all of that, and I loved it. I was just totally in my element, and it was just like a brilliant 3D puzzle, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And the second part was just helping to develop other people. So helping to develop other people's careers, and guide people, and then helping to develop people's challenges and support people on managing and finding a pathway forward. So Wellness Blueprint was born out of that, and what my desire to help people. Now I support anyone from performance practitioners. I have some coaches that I work with here in the Premier League. I've got another guy in the NBA. I have a CEO, a major multinational. I've got multiple partners at Giga Projects. I've got, people in the corporate space that I see as one-to-one clients, which I coach them and support them with some of their challenges relating to work-life harmony, relating to wanting a second set of eyes on situations that they have. And I also work with organizations to support a whole range of different people related to stress management, arming leaders with the tools to support their staff. So we're talking about stress management, burnout prevention, resilience, psychological safety, all these types of things. And I like working with the organizations because it gives me more opportunity and scope to positively influence more people. So Wellness Blueprint is essentially an offering which has loads of different jump off points, but essentially it's my way of translating the skills that I've got from these elite environments, my own experiences, and my education into the everyday context of each person's life. So I try to arm people with those skills to be able to deal with stress so that they can respond and not react, change their relationship with stress, shoehorn in some well-being, self-care in the fast lane into their everyday life without the knock-on consequences of having to take something away from their professional identity. So yeah, that's essentially what I do now.
Yeah, I really, looking through it, I thought there was a lot of valuable information there, and it made me want to speak to you even more. One of the things I wanted to ask about as I was looking at the site, I think in today's world, everybody's a leadership expert, a leadership consultant, leaders, 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 leaders. We hear it so much. As I was looking at your site, I believe the word used, it was sustainable leaders. And I thought that was interesting because I think we hear about leaders and everybody wants to help carve out the next line of leaders. But I personally, at least, I don't think I've ever really thought of it as how do we carve out sustainable leaders who will be able to lead, build, and continue moving forward. What do you think of that as far as, being leaders, but really being a sustainable leader?
I think there's some unique elements that come with being a leader, and a leader needs to not only understand everything that an individual has been provided with from an education standpoint. Let's say if their well-being, they're talking about stress management. A leader's a human. Everyone's just a human, so they need to know how to manage the stresses of everyday life as well. But what the leader also has on top of that is the additional responsibility, and sometimes that weighs heavy, of supporting other people with their well-being, of supporting other people with their stress management, with their productivity, with their outcomes, with their goals, and being that supportive individual. That's an additional burden that exists within the leadership space, and I feel that that's not always given enough credit. So how do you support your team, and what are the unique demands that you have as a leader? Because they do differ from someone who's an employee to someone who's a leader. Then how do you support your team? How do you create an environment where people are comfortable to open up? And how do you, like a lot of leaders that I've spoken to will say, well, I just didn't know. I didn't know that you were going through that. I'm so sorry. I wish you'd have told me. That person's obviously not felt comfortable enough to open up about it, and that speaks a little bit of the culture. So how do you build and create a situation and an environment where people can say, I'm struggling here, and know that you have the skills to be able to support that, or you can direct them into the right place. So that's two kind of elements. And a lot of the leaders that I've spoken to, they have that deep sense of responsibility for everybody else's well-being. So what they do is they put everybody else first. That's the first thing that I really noticed. The second thing is that I really do struggle. I really haven't come across many leaders who are embodying the pointers, the techniques, the strategies, the culture of well-being to the level that they should be. So what a staff member, a team member will see is what the leader does. They won't necessarily, they will watch what the leader does, they'll engage with that. And there's so much information coming in. It's not always about what the leader says. So the leader can say, right, you guys, you disappear, go home 5 o'clock. And then they might have to work late one day for whatever reason, or be in the office later, and they'll still see the leader there. But then that leader's there every day doing the same thing until 7. So they're not embodying the change. Whereas if the leader is there with his briefcase and his jacket's there, right, off, we're all going. I'm turning the lights off. Then he's leading from the front. He can go home and do what he wants to do after that. But essentially, what you're doing is you're saying to your people, this is the behavior that I want and expect, and I'm showing it. It's, you can't be a dentist with bad teeth, really. You can't be a fat nutritionist. It just doesn't quite work together. So I feel like that's an element that a lot of leaders miss. But there's also this high performance element where leaders are high performance. Like high performing, you can have a high performing dad, mum. You can have high performing anybody. It's just high performance means a different thing to different people. But a high performance leader will often take things from military, from elite sport environments. But the thing that they often miss out on is the regeneration and recovery and the switching off element. So it's not more and better. To be sustainable and create that longevity in your career at very high level, you have to switch off. You have to have good boundaries. And those things are intentional. They don't just happen by chance. You have to know what your left and right limits are. You have to manage your mental energy. You have to take appropriate rest and know what that looks like for you. Micro, meso, macro. micro breaks throughout the day, you need to take those. You need to take those medium breaks, have weekends off, evening shutdown, transition from work mode to home mode. These are kind of deep skills that often a lot of people don't put time and attention to. That's the work that I do now, essentially. But when we frame it in this way, and I speak to a lot of the people I work with who are leading teams, they're like, yeah, I never really thought about that whole oxygen mask on first analogy, and how you don't have to sacrifice your own well-being for the well-being of your team. You can actually make it kind of a collaborative approach. So that's my interpretation of a sustainable leader.
Wow. You really, again, it hits home a lot of what you're saying, because, even for me throughout my own career, when I hear you put it and frame it that way, it makes me have a different outlook on things, because I think just in general, especially here in the United States, at least, I think the culture that I am most familiar with and see is that leaders are the ones who are, I'll say this, Josh, you hear about leading from the front. I honestly look at it that I think it's leaders suffer from the front. They suffer so that they think by suffering, they're allowing their teams to do all that, what you just said, the wellness, the well-being, but continue to suffer. Where's that fine line for, and you mentioned this a little bit about corporations, because I think corporations nowadays talk a lot about wellness and well-being, but I think it almost skips the leadership level. It goes from corporate, let's talk about wellness and well-being for the employees, but here are all our leaders, and they're the ones missing it all. Is that what you kind of experience in what you do and see?
I see that there are packages available and that they're kind of scalable, but that middle section that that you describe, they often don't access what they have been provided with, and they're not given what they need, and they don't access it because they don't know how to. They don't have the time to do it. So they've got all these demands. It just becomes another thing that I need to do. Oh, there's someone who's doing a 1 hour stress management workshop. That would be great. But that means I'm going to have to do an additional hour's work at the back end because I've got an hour that I'm not working there. So there are a lot of different elements around it, and I see that leaders and people managers they are provided with support. I'm just not always sure whether it's the support that they need. And I think there's also this kind of a large amount of you need to take responsibility and onus for it as an individual with well-being, whereas actually it's about that culture within the organization and having well-being ingrained in the fabric. It's not something, oh, I'm just going to go and do a bit of well-being. It just is. It should exist, and that's what the best organizations are doing. And it's very hard to do because it requires alignment throughout the organization, from the top all the way down. But it can be a real challenge to get that alignment when an organization is worrying about profit first and things like this, and profits, productivity, and financial metrics, whereas a leader's worrying about those things plus their team's health, the individual on the ground's worrying about their health, and the narratives aren't always aligned. So there's a phrase, with them, it's what's in it for me, and understanding the different agendas at each level is fundamentally important, and the wellbeing strategy needs to adapt a little bit towards that. But I do think that the guys on the ground, the middle management, if you like, and then the senior leaders, they need slightly different things. And I think some of those questions relate to what do you feel you want from us? How can we support you?
It's great stuff. I will say this too. I've had the experience now over my own career of working a lot with really, really high level professionals over in Europe. And it's funny because I think they do a much better job in Europe regarding being able to kind of sign off and not always be on constantly. And to the point, I've said this numerous times throughout my own career, I'm jealous and I strive to be more like that and want to emulate it more. Man, this has been really, really good. So I do want to ask you this before we finished here. You a lot of great stuff you're doing with Wellness Blueprint. I always like to hear from folks like you about any initiatives. What are you excited about? Things looking forward to as far as direction of where Wellness Blueprint is going?
Yeah, so I literally exited sport about 2 weeks ago. So I finally finished up that job, and this is all in. I'm all in on Wellness Blueprint now. I've been building it for years. This has been part of my exit strategy, and the weight off my shoulders is huge because of that huge decision and big change. Uh, so Wellness Blueprint, right now, actually on the 13th of May, I have a stress management burnout prevention course kicking off, which is called Thrive. That's a 6-week pathway and an 8-week pathway kind of running in parallel. That is a pathway for talent and then for leaders. So the talent is all individuals who are challenged, struggling, overwhelmed with stress, burnout, anxiety at this moment in time. There's 3 interactive calls on that 6-week program, and then there's a 2-week bolt-on on the leaders program. That is where we'll dive into how leaders can support their individual team members, themselves, and their unique demands, create and build that kind of psychological safety. And there's an additional call on that. That one kicks off on the 13th of May. So please, if anyone is interested in that they are struggling, they're overwhelmed, and they really want to know how they can start to change their relationship with stress and take control kind of once and for all, then that would certainly be a pathway that I would advise. I've also got a community called the Wellness Hub, which I'm kicking off in the next in Q2. So you can keep an eye on that on the website, and I'll send a link for that as well. And that is essentially what I like to call the Netflix of wellbeing. It's very short, very sharp content that you can go in and find exactly what you want. So there's about 8-10 different areas relating to stress management, switching off, mental energy, exercise, nutrition. What else have we got? Mindfulness, work-life harmony, all these different areas where you think you're struggling in one area, bang, you go there. And that's full of contributors who are all qualified, certified sports psychologists, coaches, and I've got people in there from the corporate space, partner level, CEOs, through to NBA coaches, Premier League footballers, some people working in the NFL. So there's a whole host of different people in there interacting. So that's also available. And yeah, if you're interested in what I've got to say and anything has resonated with you, then drop me a message and I'll be pleased to have a chat.
Yeah, I think folks are going to find this really, really valuable. And I'm going to be sure the full episode of this may not air prior to them, but I feel so engaged by this conversation. I'm definitely going to cut out this part here and start to put it up as its own clip over the next few days so that people will not miss out on May 13th and what you have going on. Because I think a lot of people, myself included, could definitely benefit from that. So I want to do that. I think it'll make a difference for some people. So last question, and this just comes to my mind from this discussion, but you mentioned single parent, 4-year-old son, I believe you said you currently have. So Josh, doing what you do now, what do you hope for him in regards to this? How do you help coach him?
I don't. He coaches me, I think. He's one thing that I'm learning really, really hard, and a tough lesson is that his behavior is a reflection of mine, and his behavior is he's mirroring and matching. He's a sponge for what I'm putting out onto him. And I mean, there are days when he's just a total asshole. It's just the way that kids are, though, isn't it? And you could be perfect, but he could just be a little shit, and that's totally normal. But there are other times if I'm distracted, then he'll do something to pull me back in. There are times when if I'm not being focused enough on him, he'll do something to pull me back in. And he's just a constant lesson. And so he's coaching me, not the other way around. I just want him to be happy. I want him to be happy and healthy, to find his own path. And I want him to know that the world is his oyster. He can go anywhere, be anything he wants to be, and he will never be pigeonholed into a certain thing by me. And I want to just provide as much opportunity as possible. So my mantra for my life is to have enough time and money to spend with the people I love doing the things I love. And he's a large part of that. So what I am now doing is building a career which fits into the life that I want to lead. That is essentially for him and me. So that's a huge priority. So I keep that close, and I also reflect quite deeply on. I've got no reference points as a single parent. I don't know whether I'm doing a good job or not. So all I can do is watch his behavior and look at how healthy he is and say, is he all right? Is he not? And just do the best I can and try not to be too hard on myself, really.
Hey man, that was probably the best way we could have ended this. Really, really poignant stuff, Josh. This has been an absolute pleasure for me. I say it all the time. I think, excuse me, but I think with the podcast in general, I do it more for me to help me grow. And I'm hoping along the way here, as I'm starting to grow, that people are getting as much out of this as I am. So really, really thank you, Josh. I appreciate it. My pleasure. Everyone, check out the Wellness Blueprint. Check out Josh. We'll make sure we have information in the show notes. It's really, really valuable stuff. And Josh, thank you again.
My pleasure. Lovely to be here.
Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate the support and you all watching and listening. Please support Josh and the Wellness Blueprint. It's going to be something you won't regret. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Josh, bye.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.